Hello, and welcome to Informatically Speaking, a Greater Delaware Valley ANIA podcast designed to promote knowledge sharing in the field of nursing informatics, locally, nationally, and globally within our unique industry. At GDV ANIA, we are committed to providing opportunities for professional development with the goal of advancing nursing informatics practice. I'm your host, Constance McLaughlin. Welcome back to our series on influencing behavior. This is episode 6 in the series, and Bruce Wilson is back. Welcome back, Bruce.
Hey, thanks, Constance. Glad to be here as always. Looking forward to this.
This is fun. So, we have been through 5 episodes already. We talked about so much. And I think the one thing I think you wanted us to really remember, 3 things. And I'm going to mystify you right now by telling you exactly what they are. First
Let me hear it.
Clarifying measurable results. Like, what is the thing that we want to happen, right?
Step 1. Yep, you got
Step
it.
2, find vital behaviors. What are the vital behaviors? What are the barriers you're looking at? You're checking it out. You want to see what's happening. Why are you not getting the results you want to get? And then 3 are the sources of influence. And funny enough, that's what we're getting into today. So this episode is about source 1, personal motivation. But maybe you want to give us a little bit of a recap so people remember what we talked about in episode 5 on diagnosing.
You bet. You did an amazing job summarizing that up. Influencers do 3 things very well, which you just called out. They're certain about what they want. They identify the behaviors they are to get it, and they use the sources of influence to help ensure that they achieve the results. In the mix between there, which is what we talked about last week, is this notion of diagnose. Before you can identify how to use the sources of influence in your favor to change behavior, you first have to diagnose why somebody's doing what they're doing. And that was one of the key questions we equipped everybody with last time. One of the tools of don't go into shame and blame, ask one question and one question only. Why is this person doing what they're doing? And once we have that diagnosis, then we're ready to move to the next part of our model, which is, as you pointed out, what we're going to talk about today. And that is the different sources of influence, but we're specifically going to focus on source 1. And this is what we call personal motivation. And Constance, since you kind of got some extra homework, I'll ask you, or came in prepared, I guess, to answer some extra homework. I'm gonna ask you this. We said last time people do things for 2 reasons and 2 reasons only. Because they what?
Because they can, and because they want to.
I
think,
right? I'll say it a little different. Because they want to. That's the motivation piece, and because they can. And so we're continuing out of that podcast from last week where we had diagnosing. Hey, okay, now we've diagnosed, why is this person doing what they're doing, and is it because they want to, or because they can, or both? And so as we look at personal motivation, this is source 1. And I always like to point out that there are 6 sources of influence, but they numbered them on purpose. The authors and the creators could have very easily just said, hey, personal motivation, personal ability, and gone through this, but they numbered them. And that is because personal motivation is the strongest source of influence. This is intrinsic motivation. These are the things that motivate me as an individual. And so we always, when we looking at sources, we always want to try to leverage personal motivation first. Additionally, and I talked about this in one of the previous podcasts, I believe it was kind of the overview where I gave just a quick overview of the sources. People often, almost always, will want to go to what I call human thinking 1.0, which is the old carrot and the stick. If you do this, I'll give you that. And that would be really source 5. And they've, in their model, have very distinctly called it out almost the last source to change behavior. And so it really takes, what I'm trying to say is it really takes some practice to start thinking about, okay, it's not just one reason, i.e., if this, then that, carrot and stick. There's more than one reason, and we want to tap into personal motivation first. Now, before we dive into that, I gave all the listeners some homework, and I hope that they followed up on it, which will make this conversation, and in fact, all of the subsequent podcasts, significantly easier to understand. And that is, I'd ask folks to take a look at the YouTube video called "Blind and Outnumbered," and it's about a 7.5 minute video of done in a really fantastic and what I'll say cute way of what these sources of influences are and how to potentially use them in your favor or to your advantage in getting that vital behavior. And so, if you haven't had a chance to go watch that, I would encourage you to do that. And then, lastly, I always say this at every podcast. This is a reminder that this content is over the influencer book, which can be found at www.cruciallearning.com. It's put out by a company called Crucial Learning before they were acquired, called Vital Smarts. And so all of these tools, courses, et cetera, can be found out there. And I would encourage folks that want to learn more about this content to visit that site. By the way, I am no way affiliated with them, in case you're wondering, Constance. Let's go ahead and dive in to personal motivation. So I want to take us back, Constance, to if you remember very early on, we were talking about the clarified measurable result, and I actually used the example of Don Berwick, that is actually one of the influencers from the book, and he, this is for the 100,000 Lines campaign, and he had said for his clarified measurable result, sum is not a number, soon is not a time, and that's how they kind of started kicking that off. But it was really interesting when if you look into that story more, if you actually read the book, you'll see that he did something that's really unique. And in your world, in the clinical world, I think you can appreciate this. And for those of you that are listening that are clinical, this is a really good story or example. So there's really two primary strategies in this area. One, create a personal experience, and then two, create a vicarious experience. And so, and then there's a third one of just sample it or just try it. But I'm going to start with the first one, which is the personal experience. And what he did was he was trying to mitigate those never events from occurring in their hospitals. And so at one of the retreats with all of the C-suites of these hospitals, we're talking, three-piece suit executive, top brass business folks that would go away on the retreat and talk about these never events at their hospitals. At one of the meetings, he said to them, hey, what I want you to do is pick up a case that had a never event in your hospital, and I want you to research it, but you can't delegate it. You have to go research it yourself and talk to the people that were impacted and experienced by this. And then when we meet again, because they do these retreats, I think quarterly, when we meet again, I want you to report out to the group. And he said the next time that it happened, he said, pure magic happened. He said one by one, they started to tell their stories. And as they told their stories, they obviously told them with passion. They would well up with tears and about how these events that happened in their hospital really impacted them personally. And so that was, again, what we call personal motivation for them to start to change their behaviors as they started thinking about mitigating or reducing these never events in their hospital. And so anytime that we can have an opportunity to create a personal experience, we want to go for that. And I always give the example in the clinical informatics space that, hey, in the informatics world, we're often and it may not be this way at your organization, Constance, but it's often or very common that the folks in informatics, due to their geographic limitations, a lot of times they're located a different building on site. They're not necessarily in the main acute facility, or for many different reasons, they're not in the same just general proximity or locations as their end users, and they don't have a lot of day-to-day interaction. And so I always encourage folks to, and it's a lot easier to form opinions and perspectives about the people that we're serving when we're not around them every day. And so I always encourage folks to, what I would just say, walk the floors or go out and have an experience from a provider or nurse perspective, technician perspective, people consuming the technology to see what they're doing, how they're using it, what they like, what they don't like. And that will actually really have an impact on, again, this intrinsic motivation for the individual. And that's a really great example of what we call a personal experience. Now, the next best way, Constance, is I kind of gave you a clue. Do you know what the next, if you can't have a personal experience, you kind of know, have any idea, I should say, what the next best experience would be?
I have no idea.
No idea. Oh, I gave it to you earlier, one of the strategies. If
Did
you
you
were
give it to
listening,
me?
I did. It's a creative vicarious experience. And we don't always have an opportunity um, to be physically present and have that personal experience. Um, but we do have an opportunity, especially with our media rich and digital rich world today, to create vicarious experiences. And we all know vicarious experiences is my favorite way to sum it up. If you've ever seen a movie trailer, you've experienced a vicarious experience. The movie trailer gave you a preview of coming attractions and invoked some kind of feeling from you. You're like, oh, I think that movie's terrible, or oh, I really want to go see that movie. And so you were very interested in going to do or see the thing. And a vicarious experience is the same way. You may not always be able to um, be uh, physically present in the other examples, but you sure as heck can send a message out or a note out and have people experience through a different medium, might be a better way to say it. And so that's always a really, really great way to do it. And then the last thing that we want to do, and this is one of my favorites, and I invoke this all growing up, and in fact, my sister would always argue with me and say, "You're always so nice to your kids," and why do you do that? And this she was specifically referring to my dinner time ritual. And if you've ever had a kid and you've eaten dinner with him, which I know that sounds a little goofy because everybody has, you know the challenges of trying to get a kid to eat something that they don't like. I'm assuming,
Mhm.
Constance, you may have seen that movie in your life before. When we want to have people personally motivated towards achieving the desired behavioral outcome, there's this, and this is just AKA from the School of Bruce 101. It's not part of the Vital Smarts. In other words, it's part of it, but they don't specifically call this out. But I'm telling you what the science behind it is, and it's really called the law of psychological reactance. And what happens is what that law really says is whether you're 3 or 83, if you eliminate my choice, then I'm gonna be opposed to you, right? Because
Right.
we're perceived as you're reducing my options, right? So even
Yes.
if I want to be, even if it's just for a short period of time, I'm gonna, because you violated that law, uh, I'm gonna resist you. And so
Yes.
what the last tactic's really about with creating personal motivation is really don't ask for a total commitment, just ask for a commitment in small amount or small pieces, right? And so basically just try it. So the example of my kids is I could tell them, hey, eat your food. But knowing the science that I know, I knew that they are going to be like, even if it tastes great, I'm not sure that I want to. And so instead, I would just say, hey, the rule for the house is you always just have to try one bite. The choice is
Yes.
yours, but you always have to try one bite. If you want to take more bites, awesome. If you don't, I'll make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And my sister used to think that was the most ridiculous thing. And like I told her, my clarified measurable result, the goal that I wanted is to make sure my kids ate, which is a behavior, healthy food. It didn't matter to me if they liked what I was eating, right? And it wasn't like this exorbitant thing that I had to go create I wasn't going to go create two steak dinners. That's not what we're talking about here. One chicken dinner, one steak dinner. We're just talking about offering choice. But the way to say it differently is choice is the foundation of motivation. So, as a leader, as somebody in informatics, if you can offer choice, then you are going to be better off. So, example of that would be is, hey, we know the behavior we want is for somebody to document family or social history in this way. But the choice we can give them is Do you want family history displayed on the top of your screen or the side of your screen? Or do you want your, social history coming up after this click or that click? And I'm not intimately familiar with all of your different systems, but the point is don't focus on uh, restricting their choice. Give them choice within a defined area, or what we could call this also, if we really wanted to get really fancy, we could call this nudge theory. And I talked about it earlier of libertarian paternalism, right? Making them, and I won't say making, offering them choice, preserving the right for choice, but still giving them the best or the choice that like a parent would give. And another example of this would be, when my kids were young, I would always say, do you want to take a bath now or in 5 minutes? And you've heard me say that before. And
Yes.
uh, and it's the outcome or the behavior I wanted was the bath, but the choice was theirs. And I tested this with my kids, I would always say, hey, it's bath time, you have to take a bath. And they would always resist. But if I always would say, do you want to take a bath now or in 5 minutes? They would always typically, sometimes they would say now, but they would most often say 5 minutes. And this is where I would hit them with the whammy. This is where the other sources, I know it sounds like I'm utilizing Jedi mind tricks here, but this is where the other sources come in handy. And then I would use a source six, which is, we're not there yet, but it's the structural ability. It's the environment. So then I would, we had this little Pampered Chef timer on my refrigerator, and I always set the timer for 5 minutes. And Constance, do you know what happened when the timer would go off?
They would go.
Yeah, they would go take a bath, right? It was
Excellent.
unbiased environmental source reinforcing what we had agreed upon. But because I had
Right.
given them that choice, they were able to go make that choice. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, that doesn't really happen. That's just for little kids. Well, fast forward, my kids are teenagers now, and now it's I use the same, what I call the alternate choice at bedtime. I use it for curfew. I use it for device time, and it works out great. My youngest daughter is Mia. Mia, do you think you're gonna be home tonight at 10:30 or 11? Oh, I think I'll be home at 11. Okay, well that's your curfew, so perfect. But I gave her that choice versus if
Right.
I would have just said be home at 11, again, it doesn't feel the same. So we really want folks with source number one to be anchored in that personal motivation, because when they are, again, they're bought into the behavior, and choice is the foundation of motivation.
I love that because, then I start thinking about, and I guess a lot of people listening will probably be thinking, well, how do I get a provider or a nurse or anybody to do what I need them to do in the system? And sometimes you don't have a choice, but maybe you turn it into would you like me to come by at 4 o'clock? Or would you like me to come by at 3 o'clock when you're over here? Because I think I might be there. And hey, maybe we can grab a coffee on the way, or, just kind of make it into something else. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's go ahead and roll out these three strategies. And for those listening, I'll just repeat them. So for personal motivation, as we look at that source of influence, our three strategies are to create a personal experience, create a vicarious experience, or offer choice. And so let's take your influencer challenge and apply it to your dish. I'm going to call it the dishwasher challenge. And
Oh,
as I always do, I'm gonna make you be the student and put you up in front of the classroom here. So how would you utilize these tools with your challenge? Before you answer,
yeah.
let's remind our listeners what your clarified measurable result is, what your vital behavior is, and how you might use this source.
Yes. So my clarifying measurable result is that I would like my son to put his dishes in the dishwasher every time. My vital behavior is that he actually pick up the dishes and walk into the kitchen. And then, as we talked about last time, open the
Open the dishwasher. That's
dishwasher.
the vital
Yes.
behavior, is opening the
Walking in
dishwasher.
there, opening the dishwasher. Sources of influence, let's see, whether it's a choice, a vicarious experience, or personal motivation.
What
Well,
question could you ask him at the dinner table or maybe at the end of dinner that might trigger his behavior?
well, I don't know that I can give him a choice.
Well, I was thinking with your challenge, if it were me, I might simply ask him a couple of simple questions. And that would be is, do you want to, you could say, do you want to take your plate in directly after dinner or, by 6 o'clock, which seems a little goofy. But I think the better question might be, and that's a time-based question,
Hmm.
is, hey, do you want to take your plate in and mine or just yours? And let him decide if he wants to help you out or if he's taking his. But either way, he's still taking dishes to the dishwasher.
Ah,
And
okay.
so again, you want the vital behavior. The vital behavior is him opening the dishwasher. So would you be interested in carrying mine dishes along with yours, or do you just have hands for yours? Something along those lines. And you're still offering him choice, but his choice isn't will you do it? It's do you want to do mine and yours or just yours? And it doesn't have to be that question, but that's the line of
Right.
thinking, right, from a tool perspective. Because I thought about this, and this is where I see a lot of people struggle. All three of these strategies are fantastic, but you think about, well, how can I create a direct experience for him of how, pardon my language, ticked off I get as a parent when he doesn't do this, or because he doesn't care about it, or how can I create a vicarious experience for him through this? And those are great strategies, but other than sharing your frustration with him, which you may or may not have already done, and sometimes in that case, no disrespect to you, he might be like, meh, because he doesn't get frustrated by it. This notion of choice is the foundation of motivation, if you will, is a really powerful strategy to invoke here in this scenario. Now, in my scenario that we had, if you think back to the vital signs scenario that I've been working with all along, we wanted to figure out a way to tap into intrinsic motivation, and we actually didn't do choice at all. We did both personal experience and vicarious experience. And so the personal experience was um, this was a very small community, and a lot of the community members were family. And so a lot of the people at the hospital had family members that had died from sepsis. And so they shared their
Mhm.
stories with others. And that the notion of sharing stories really really helped. And then they also said they came up with a mantra of we're family, and so that was one of their taglines. And so they were connecting it to both the real experience and the I won't say the fictional, because but the like the distant or vicarious construct of we're family. And so that was how they were tapping into, in business world, we call it the why. But that's how they were tapping it into the why of the organization, or really anchoring and getting that intrinsic motivation.
I love that you always have a lot of different ways to look at things because that's what exactly we need on this kind of thing. Because when we're in our own situation, I think sometimes it's hard to kind of separate out, especially when you think about a program like this because you're trying to do it by the book, right? You're thinking, okay, well, what matches up with this? Like the whole carrot and the stick thing is easy. That's what people identify with that. But motivation, and giving the choice, I think, is genius because that is something. And actually, now that I think about it, I remember I had a light bulb moment when my son was little because we would be going out or doing something. It's like, come on, what are you doing? Come on, hurry up. And finally, for some reason, I realized he's not on the same timetable as we are.
Right.
So what are we're getting all upset about it, right? We're getting all ticked off that he's not doing what we're asking to do, but he's oblivious, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, first he's a boy, and second he's 3 years old, and he's like, whatever, it doesn't interest me. I don't care about going over there. But yeah, so giving them the choice, hey, can you want to do this now? You want to do this in 5 minutes or something like that? I
Yep.
like the connecting stories piece of it as well.
Yeah, and think about this too. So that the I've talked a lot about choice as the foundation of motivation, and I've talked really about one tactic within their alternate choice, like this or that. But there's also this notion of, especially as you guys roll out new workflows or new feature functionality, to kind of take this to your world, you don't have to ask for a total commitment, right? So I remember, documentation was always one of the things that seems to be kind of itchy with providers. And maybe your system has one or two ways to document, but maybe you're trying to move everybody towards a one standardized way. And it doesn't have to be documentation. It could be, I know there's a lot of standardizations that organizations are trying to move to. But in that interim phase, a lot of times I think informaticists are challenged with, well, do we just turn that function on and off and they don't have it, or do we give them choice? And a lot of times the CNIOs and CMIOs that I work with were like, we don't want to take it off right away, and that was really wise, because they're like, we want them to wade into it. And so when you have something like that, when you're strategizing with your leadership, you might think about that, like, hey, wait a minute, we want our end goal, the vital behavior we want in these scenarios is adoption of the new process. And so if adoption of our new process is, if we just turn it off and say, tough luck, pal, you're taking it, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, which is where a lot of us want to go a lot of times, it's not going to be as effective, as if we said, hey, look, we know we got to move to point X or new feature functionality, but let's offer folks choice over a defined time period, and let's publicize that. Like, we hear you. We want your feedback. If there's some workflow concerns, whatever it may be, and because of that, we're going to offer you choice. And I would literally use those words with somebody I was consulting with. We're literally using choice and giving you the choice to use either method, but we would really like for you to try the new one at your own pace, because we ultimately, that's where we're going, but we need your feedback. And if we have your feedback, that's how much better we can make the experience for you. And you'll be amazed. People will be very willing to give you that feedback. And oh, by the way, while they're giving you that feedback, they just happen to be doing the new behavior. See how magical that is?
Right, right. Yeah, and I guess I was going back to something that I had experienced as well, is the using the mics for dictation or calling somebody to actually do the dictation. And of course, we know that using transcriptionists costs money, right?
Oh yeah,
And trying to move folks in that direction. But many times in giving a choice like that, when they give you the feedback, they will tell you what their barriers are at the same time,
for
so
sure.
that you can fix the barriers and then make it easier for them to make the right choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we wind this down, is there any questions that you have about any of the tactics or scenarios that we brought up?
No, I don't think I do this time. I think it's a lot more clear to me now, about it, and quite honestly, I forgot about the different aspects of it. But choice is always the top dog, I think. But making it personal too,
Yeah.
is something that's it's just goes right to your heart. So I think that's always a good one. Just depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah. And keep in mind, we always learn best from stories. And so as we're writing or recording podcast or creating videos, if we're trying to, again, reach a broader audience, tap into the notion of storytelling and into, hey, this is what it means for the organization. This is, let me tell you about Johnny who was impacted by this, or whomever. That goes a long way. So
Excellent. Well, thanks, Bruce. I enjoyed it as always. So
my
we
pleasure.
will wrap up this episode, episode 6 of the series, and we will talk to you next time.
Sounds like a plan. We will be covering source 2, which is where we'll move from personal motivation to personal building. Do you have the skill to do the new thing or new behavior? And so I'm excited to talk about that. So I will
Sounds
see you
fun.
next time.
Excellent. Thanks, Bruce. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll join us again for another session of Informatically Speaking.
This has been a production of the Greater Delaware Valley chapter of the American Nursing Informatics Association. For more information about the GDV ANIA chapter, visit us at community.ania.org/Greater Delaware Valley/home.